Those who have been to a ruined wedding, what happened? The wedding was at a state park that's famous for its giant gorge/waterfall. I don't know whose idea this was, but someone suggested a photo overlooking this gorge and everybody was game. The wedding party went around a stone security barrier and the maid of honor literally fell off the cliff to her death. It was like 500 feet. Okay, this ties for worst wedding story in this thread. Edited, many more death stories have been posted, so we're up to something like a 20-way tie by now. August 1992? Attended a wedding reception and was seated near the cameraman. An aunt of mine was sitting closer to the camera and spent the evening commenting and gossiping about everyone, and much of it came out on the video. The cameraman was great. He did 2 copies, one edited and the other no holds barred. The unedited version is the stuff of legend. Was a guest of friend of the bride, did not know anyone attending. Very expensive over-the-top place, several hundred guests of this very Italian wedding. Maid of honor grabs mic at the cocktail hour, begins her speech, rambling, drunk. Quickly devolves to stating the recently deceased mother of the bride was against this wedding and that's basically what killed her. Plus Vinny will never give up prostitutes. She is tackled by several people and dragged away. The happy couple is separated and divorced within a year. I was studying photography and used to act as an assistant to a well-known wedding photographer. Went to a couple's wedding. He shot digital and I shot black and white film. Spent all day with the couple from 9 a.m. through till 2 a.m. the next morning when we left. I could see how genuinely in love they were. It was only a day but I got to know them quite well and really liked them both. The next morning, I get a call from the photographer and his voice was shaky. He explained that the groom had been murdered that night after the reception party. 3 guys had broken into their bungalow to steal wedding gifts. The groom got out of bed to stop them, and they executed him in front of the bride. I was in shock for about 2 weeks. This story was in South Africa, if that helps explain how or why this happened. The next weekend, the photographer and I went to the bride's house to present her with the photos. We'd worked together to get the job massively accelerated, so she had the photos of her husband. We did it at our own expense and didn't charge her a penny for the day or all the prints and album. Sort of the least we could do. Because my photos didn't matter as much, I'd been able to simply capture those natural moments between them, rather than staged wedding photos. So they had the normal album pics but also about 150 snaps of just them being a couple. She was in tears from the moment we arrived till we left a few hours later. She was a shadow of the women I'd met only a week earlier. That crap still haunts me. Edit, I didn't expect this story to get the attention it has. I'm sorry for any upset this has caused anyone reading this, but I believe it's an important reality check. I loved South Africa in a lot of ways, but it's a very troubled place with insane murder and rape rates. My story is by no means unique or even particularly shocking by South African standards. I also have worse stories like this from friends and neighbors. I have PTSD from my time living there and the things I'd endured. I've got friends who were diagnosed with PTSD stemming from their time there too. Also, for anyone wanting to read the news article about this event. I hope this dissuades a few people from visiting South Africa, and in doing so perhaps I save a few lives. Web link. The bride's father was 45 minutes late to walk his daughter down the aisle. While we were waiting, the air conditioning broke in the venue. It was over 100 degrees outside and humid as F. The place was overcrowded. You could barely move without bumping into someone else, and in the heat that was extra miserable. I guess the air conditioning problem had also affected the refrigeration or something because most of the food was spoiled. The only food on the buffet was salad, spaghetti and rolls. Not enough to feed even half the guests. Most people left after the first dance. 2 of the bride's aunts fainted. The bride and the wedding planner were crying. When the wedding planner is also crying, you know the day has spiraled out of control. Father of the bride died suddenly 3 days before the wedding, pre-COVID. Daddy-daughter dance was mom, bride, and picture of dad. Same with walking down the aisle to give her away. Lots of tears. Not many smiles. Even the bartender at the hotel knew the night before and was talking about it with me. It was a big wedding, over 300 people. Turns out the bride had been having an affair with her cousin's husband. The cousin had known for a little bit, but waited until the wedding to go table to table, letting everyone know the bride was sleeping with her husband. Poor groom was blindsided. Worst part was his father-in-law was well off and opened up a restaurant for him. Well, he lost his wife and his restaurant. I went to a wedding where the bride and groom bought the wedding package on Groupon. Which is fine, why spend a fortune for one day? But I guess the venue thought they could cut some corners. So they stuck us in a room that smelled so strongly of cat urine some people immediately left. The only drinks were those from a vending machine. It was next to an airport, so every time a plane took off the ceremony had to be paused because you couldn't hear anything. And the day after the event, every single one of us had food poisoning. Edit. Bonus story, because even though it didn't ruin the wedding for the couple, it ruined it for the bridal party. I was a bridesmaid for my friend. Flew across the world for over 10 hours to be there. Had to do the setup of the venue, assign people to rooms, put signs on doors, finish the seating chart, transport food, redo her bouquet because she didn't like it, etc., etc. The whole time she's rude and tells everyone within earshot that the bridesmaids aren't helping. Her maid of honor was absolutely bending over backwards trying to keep her happy, and instead of being grateful she instead told her sister, "I should have asked you to be my maid of honor instead." She was pretty cold to me and kept asking if I'd lost weight. I said yes because I had been ill but didn't think much of it. At the reception, her new husband takes the opportunity to read the speech she clearly wrote for him to say to me, "We are so glad you fit into your dress." In front of over 100 people. I don't speak to her anymore, and neither does her maid of honor or other bridesmaid. This was one I worked at. After the ceremony, right at the start of the reception, photographer was taking jumping photos of the bride and bridesmaids, so they were all jumping in the air while wearing heels. Bride landed and dislocated her knee, then passed out and kept going in and out of consciousness. We called an ambulance who turned up and fixed her knee, etc., but she wanted to continue with the wedding. She then had the first course of the meal and threw up down her dress, and had to sit with her mum in another room while everyone else danced, etc. Felt so bad for her as she spent the rest of the evening crying. We attended a wedding for a family member who didn't have a lot of money. It was hosted at an inexpensive venue but was nice. My heart broke when only a third of the people invited showed up. You could see the hurt in the couple's face. They came up to our table and said, "Do you have any friends in city?" We lived an hour away. They had all this food for 100 people but only 30 guests. They were willing to have complete strangers come down just so their money and food wouldn't go to waste. We hadn't handed over our card with cash inside yet, so my husband hit the ATM and added another $100. This one has seriously bummed me out the most. A fight broke out between father of the bride, brother of the bride, and some guy that just happened to be staying at the hotel. In reality, I don't know how much of a fight it was, more just the dad and brother assaulting some man. So anyway, they were both arrested. Cut to the bride sobbing at breakfast because her dad and brother spent the evening of her wedding in jail and now face assault charges with what they did to this poor man. The groom's father groped both the bride and his daughter, my then girlfriend, multiple times each. Ended up getting punched out by his son, and locked in a minivan for a few hours until he sobered up. Edit. Half the questions are the same, and the answer is yes, he groped his own daughter, as well as his son's wife. Edit 2. Dude was belligerently drunk, had been punched, and if memory serves correct, had his hands duct taped behind his back. That's how he was able to be locked in a minivan. Child locks on the rear, and too drunk to find a way to hit the unlock in the front seats while his hands were taped. A friend of my girlfriend was getting married. The wedding was quite normal, they got married in the local church and then there was the party in a nice restaurant. The photographer asked the bride and her bridesmaids, my girlfriend was one of them, to go outside for some photos. Some minutes later one of the bridesmaids come back asking for help. There were some swans that attacked the photographer and the majority of the surrounding people were not doing anything much more than laughing at this guy who was running around and screaming. No luck catching them swans then. Went to a coworker's wedding about 15 years ago and this technically happened at the reception. It was a beautiful outdoor venue overlooking a lake. Anyways, the groom had planned to sing a song to his new wife and have fireworks launch as he was singing the last note. Well, that last note came, but the fireworks did not. He held that last note for a good 10 seconds before he finally yelled "mother effers," threw the mic down and ran to go fight the fireworks guy. No fists were thrown, but somebody did end up in the lake. The party kind of broke up after that. They also ended up getting a divorce about a year later after the groom got fired from his job for showing his dick to his boss's underage daughter. Edit. I'm sorry to say that after 15 years I don't remember the song, but the last word of the song was BAEBA. Edit 2. I don't think it was Kissed by a Rose by Seal. Edit 3. Thanks to Lippincott Elvis, I now know the song was When I'm With You by Sheriff. I'm a wedding photographer. I was at one really fancy one a couple of years ago, typical outdoor deal at a swanky location in the middle of nowhere. The place was really nice, had a large concrete stairway flanked by water fountains that led down to the altar area, so the bride could be seen by all like she was ascending from heaven. The ceremony begins and the bridal party come down and take their places. Then the bride appears with her father. She takes 3 or 4 steps down the concrete steps and her shoe twists on her. She tumbled down a good 12 feet or more and busted out the majority of her front teeth in the fall. So much blood all over her. With the place being so isolated, it took a good 40 minutes for ambulance to arrive, and she was in intense pain. Ultimately she was okay, and I got an email from them weeks later with the rescheduled date. This time there were no stairs anywhere in sight. A co-worker was at one of best friend's wedding. There were very specific rules about the food, no nuts. There were a couple people there, including the maid of honor, who were severely allergic. The venue served something that had nuts. Maid of honor went anaphylactic. EpiPen was not effective, and she died on the way to the hospital. Needless to say, there are lawsuits abound. Damn. That's not like family drama or the bride slept with someone else. That's just unimaginable. Condolences to them. My dad has vintage and veteran cars. When I was younger, he used to do some weddings with them. I loved clearing out the confetti from the car when he'd get home. One week he arrived back and there were no confetti in the car. On the way to the church, the bride changed her mind, and instead of taking her and her father to church, they asked if he could drop them at the local zoo, as it's her favorite place. So he did, left them there in full wedding attire. They were going to get a taxi home when they were done. It was the days before mobile phones too, so I'm guessing people were waiting at the church for quite a while. Edit. Veteran cars are made before 1919. Vintage 1919 to 1930 in the UK, that is. Also, I've just called my dad to ask him if he remembers this, and he seems to think, from what he could overhear, that she was only getting married because she was pregnant and thought she had 2, was early 80s. He also told me he did 2 weddings where the groom never showed up. The groom caught the bride in the toilets with another guy at the reception. He forgave her, but after 2 months or so he caught her again with another guy. A third one. During the mixed-gender bachelor party, the bride-to-be got in a spat with the groom and slept with another guy. Wedding was off the next morning. They lost $10,000. He took her back a couple of months later. Not ruined, but marred. My ex-wife's grandmother was in her 90s, in a wheelchair. While we're up at the altar, she won't shut up about the flowers, and they might need water. She's not talking quietly to her neighbor, she's yelling in her old lady voice. She didn't have dementia, she was very with it, she had no volume control, or what she was doing was inappropriate. She thought the flowers need water. They looked terrible. She yelled. One of the cousins, without saying anything, got up and started to just wheel her out. "Where are we going?" she yelled. We all got chuckle at Grandma and went on with the ceremony. Edit. Let me say that she was a very lovely woman, she just had a loud opinion at that moment. My mother was a church organist, and attended many weddings. I suppose the story that stands out was of the bride who, when asked, "Do you take this man?" broke down and said, "No, I can't, I don't love him," and ran out of the church. It was a smallish town. People found out that she had met somebody new, fallen hopelessly in love with him. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to be the first to know about Red Rabbit Reader's new videos. If you like our videos, please like them on YouTube and share them with your friends. We welcome your comments below. Press to start another of our videos.